On this special episode of Urban U, we close 2024 with stories that celebrate creativity and culture across CUNY. From Latin America's cassette tape culture to a new biography on Billie Holiday. Plus, CUNY students help shape history as curators, and a photographer captures a lost world in Lower Manhattan. And we end with a student journalist's story about the Winter Village at Bryant Park, a seasonal tradition filled with holiday magic. All that and more, welcome to Urban U.
It is counterintuitive to think that at this point in the evolution of devices to listen to music and to make music, we will go back to something that was invented in the 50s and 60s. These technologies, cassette, vinyl, etc., these formats, are adding something else to the listening experience. I feel like I've been involved with tapes for a long time, which is weird because I'm, younger than most people that have been involved with tapes for a long time. When I went to do college in Córdoba, in Argentina, I started being part of these indie music scenes. I started working in media, writing in blogs and magazines about this indie culture that I was very interested in and involved with. At least two of those labels started producing cassettes. And I'm talking 2013, 2014. We made an article about one of these labels, and I was like, wow, this is so cool. I didn't know coming into my doctorate that I was going to focus on that, but then I was like, why not? I really love this. I've been a fan of and a collector of tapes for a decade now. I just kind of meshed those things together and eventually did my doctoral dissertation about that.
I argue that these physical things that we once took for granted help us connect to music and through music different than the ways that today's streaming services allow.
The main question that I had coming into this project was what is the role of the cassette now? We don't need it. So why are labels putting the work of materializing this music? It says this mattered to someone enough that they put effort into taking it out of the cloud and put it into something that someone may or may not buy, but it's now part of a catalog. It's part of a history that a label tells. All of these things add layers of meaning and value to music productions. So we can think of music as something that is not inherently valuable, but that is made valuable with all of these tiny practices. It's a very interesting kind of value production and circulation that is based on connecting with others and less so about making profits. Things in Argentina started to get a little rougher in terms of economy, and so a lot of labels that maybe weren't thinking about tapes at the beginning suddenly saw tapes as a viable option to materialize music. And so suddenly there was this spread or a flourishing of tapes across many different genres. A lot of them are taking the time to actually spend hours pushing buttons on tape recorders, designing the cover art, this kind of artisanal value that goes into this labor. It's a lot of what people are appreciating when they're buying tapes. And even though things are getting more expensive and more expensive, the tapes continue to be very affordable. As an ethnomusicologist, what I do is ethnography. And doing ethnography means I hang out with the labels and I talk to them and I see how they live and I see how expensive things are and how they're actually struggling. I stand by them in the merch table where 20 people come and only one of them buys something. That lets me appreciate and grasp how nuanced these kind of alternative economies are. My new dream is I want to write about the work of independent labels in South America, and how they're able to do all the wonderful things that they do with very limited resources and with just the care that they put into music and valuing the music. That's what labels do. They create value. And I think that is something that is worth celebrating.
I was born and raised in the Bronx, right here in the Bronx. I was soul searching for about 5 years. After I left CSI, I was soul searching. I really didn't know what to do. I knew I was good at music. I was playing and doing gigs and stuff. Even when I was in college in Staten Island, I was playing in the jazz band. But I really still didn't really know what to do, what I wanted to do. Professor Lang has taught me time. He taught me how to play other time signatures and how to think about them. His analyses are so detailed, but they're so simple. The simple teaching Professor Lang has given me, I will never forget it. Going from playing at a small church and then playing in high school with bands and then going to school for it ultimately. Now taking the skills that I learned and applying it to a band that was just made up for us to come together and play at BB King's. That's a progress that I never would have imagined happened.
Eleanor Fagan was a young woman who grew up in, I would say, impoverished conditions. Around age 12, she got interested in going to the local bordellos in her neighborhood. And that was the first time she was introduced to the world of music and the world of, let's say, the nightlife. And she was captivated by both. She did do a little work in one of the bordellos. And at some point along the way, it became clear that she was getting a little out of control. So her mother sent for her, and then she moved to New York, where she gave up that life and really focused on becoming a singer. And that's when Eleanor Fagan became Billie Holiday.
In his new book, Better Crop, Hunter Professor Paul Alexander tells a behind-the-scenes story of both Holiday's personal and professional life. Early in her career, Holiday toured with Count Basie and later with Artie Shaw. With Shaw, she became the first African-American singer to tour with an all-white orchestra, encountering prejudice at almost every turn. Because of this, Holiday stopped touring and in 1938 moved on to become the opening act at Cafe Society, the first integrated nightclub in the United States.
She was there for 2 years. And it made her famous because there was so much attention, first of all, so much attention paid to the fact that it was an integrated nightclub. Got a huge amount of press, and also attention from like the local police department and the FBI and, you know, different government agencies to keep an eye out on what was happening.
Southern trees bear strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root.
In the spring of '39, she got this song called Strange Fruit from Abel Maripol. She immediately latched onto it because she knew that this was a song that really spoke to her heart. It's an anti-lynching anthem. Strange Fruit really took her into a different level of fame. Ahmet Ertegun, the founder of Atlantic Records, called it the first shot in the civil rights movement. She didn't march, she didn't make speeches, but she was making her statement about civil rights.
Strange Fruit ended up being the biggest selling record of her career, but with that success came a very bright spotlight.
The Federal Bureau of Narcotics was a sister organization to the FBI, and it was run by a guy named Harry Anslinger, who was an open racist. He allowed his racial prejudice to influence, you know, the targets that they would choose, and many of them ended up being jazz musicians, in part because they were prominent, mostly black figures, popular in culture. And so he went after Sonny Rollins, Charlie Parker, the list goes on. But of all of them, Billie was the biggest target because she was the most famous. And she was also a woman. And so, yeah, she was too big, and they had to knock her down a notch.
Holiday, feeling the pressure, was drinking heavily and eventually turned to drugs. Soon, she found herself in trouble with the law.
She began to dabble with heroin, and then she eventually became addicted while she was with a guy named Joe Guy. She was finally busted in 47.
Billie turned herself in, believing that she'd be sent to rehab. But in the case of the United States versus Billie Holiday, she was sentenced to a year and a day in prison. By the time she got out, she had kicked the habit, but life still wasn't easy. Because of the conviction, she lost her cabaret card, which meant she could no longer work in the New York City clubs. And her personal life, with one or two exceptions, was a mess.
She had known Tallulah Bankhead for years, but they became involved after 48, after she got out of prison. And that went on until the early 50s. The affairs with men couldn't be worse. I mean, they're just the flip side of the affairs with women. John Simmons was extremely abusive to her, physically abusive in shocking ways. Then she went on to John Levy, who was extremely abusive, became her manager, stole all of her money.
During her time with Levy, he, working with the feds, set her up for another drug bust. Then, in 1956, Louis McKay did the same thing.
Basically, what happened as a result of that one is that Louis McKay sort of forced her to marry him because a husband can't testify against a wife. And that's how he became the owner of the Billie Holiday estate when she died 3 years later. And that's why he wanted to marry her in the first place.
But through it all, Lady Day kept on singing.
Billie was totally independent in her artistic life. She did not take direction literally from anyone. She chose the material she wanted to sing and she sang it. You know, Billie didn't read or write music, but she knew music, you know, so she would work with composers and musicians who would, you know, translate it for her. She wrote at least 15 songs. 5 of them are classics. She wrote Don't Explain.
Hush now, don't explain.
Lady Sings the Blues.
Lady sings the blues. She's got them bad. She feels so sad.
And her most famous song of all is God Bless the Child.
Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own, that's got his own.
Which is one of the most recorded songs of the 20th century. She used her music to express her feelings and emotions. And you know, I mean, that's how the audience connected with her. They connected with her on an emotional level. So even at the end, when her voice was shot, her voice, you know, the audience never left her. Edith Piaf had the same kind of fan base. Judy Garland had the same kind of fan base, because that's not what they were there for. They were there for the emotion.
On May 31st, 1959, Billie Holiday was rushed to the hospital. At the age of 44, she was losing her battle with cirrhosis of the liver. But even then, the harassment didn't stop. While on her deathbed, she was arrested for heroin possession once again. The police took her mugshot and fingerprints in her hospital room and posted a guard at her door.
And I think it was this harassment that really contributed to her decline, because she, until all this happening, she had gradually started improving. But starting with the arrest and then the harassment, which was nonstop, that's when the decline began. And it was not long after that until she, you know, she died of basically a cardiac arrest. She had just a profound effect on American music. And then because of who she was and what she stood for, she's become, you know, a political symbol now as well. And so I would say here's this young black girl growing up in Baltimore, and she's ended up being an American icon. I mean, what a great American story that is. She should be celebrated today, and that's what I hope my book does.
I'm Scott Kirby for Urban U.
Both of these organizations coming together really benefits the students in a unique way, because not only are they part of the fabric of New York as individual institutions, but they each bring their own expertise to the program. One of the great things about this program is we're not just a conduit for curators, we're not just a conduit for museum educators. We make sure that all of our students are well-rounded so that they can go on to a variety of cultural institutions and do the jobs they want. We also have students who have gone on to do PhDs in history, who have gone on to work in development in social justice environments. So not just necessarily the museum world, they're taking this knowledge and applying it to a wide variety of opportunities for them.
The fact that it is completely online is extremely helpful because I also teach students online and in person. Part of what I'm interested in doing is public history. I'm really interested in memorials and how we memorialize the past in particular. My research is on slavery. And so what I hope to do with museums is to be a guest curator for certain aspects of research that I've already worked on and other ways in which museums want to diversify what they teach and the exhibits that they bring. And so I want to be a part of that.
Representation is everything, so we have to make sure that our faculty is well balanced and the experts that we bring in for our students are well balanced, and that our student body is well balanced, and that all of those things come together to create a dialogue that doesn't go one way. This isn't about necessarily just the conveyance of knowledge from our incredibly experienced faculty who have a tremendous amount to offer, but also from our incoming students who have very different perspectives.
The aspiration is to train new practitioners in the field, and I think that we are making an effort to diversify that field, as I said, but also to teach our students what it's like to really work on the ground.
I'm a sociologist and I study race and culture, and I really wanted to have a better understanding of history in the context of public history and how it's shown. The connection with the New York Historical Society was key because they have collections, and I was really interested in the collections that the Historical Society has, but I also take students to museums in my classroom. So the marriage of the two was more important for me.
As I said, what was really important for me here was the relationship between CUNY and the Historical Society. I think underrepresented communities, including the LGBTQ community, are often poorly archived and documented because they've often been underground histories. And so there are conversations happening now about how do we reclaim those histories, how do we make them manifest in ways that they've been ignored.
When our students come to the capstone, having really finished all their coursework, they are tasked with creating a new museum or cultural institution or a cultural initiative. The imagination that is informed by our students' lived experience is something that I would not necessarily have anticipated. So I see that on the ground, that kind of application of lived experience and museum studies expertise happening in the capstone and hopefully in the museum world and beyond as these students seek jobs.
Still up on Urban U, we explore how a photographer captures the lost world of Lower Manhattan and take in the festive spirit of the Winter Village at Bryant Park, a holiday favorite in New York City.
The CUNY Dance Initiative is an expansive residency program for New York City dancers and choreographers on 13 CUNY campuses across all 5 boroughs. We're celebrating our 10th year, and we are still the only program of our nature in the nation. So what we provide, which is space and time and money, are critical to the New York City dance sector.
Ticket sales are not enough to sustain the arts. Having your rehearsal expenses like nixed for a show is absolutely amazing. Having a theater provided for you is imperative.
Each residency also includes master classes, workshops, maybe a guest lecture, or some way that connects the CUNY students directly with the artist. So as we look towards our second decade, we want to be able to support more artists and also offer more connections to the CUNY communities as part of these residencies.
My New York is black and white. The sense of depicting reality in its sometimes sad, grim, often depressing, maybe. The point is that what is light and how does one interpret light? It depends on the story you want to tell and what is the best way to tell that story. I felt coming down here was an opportunity for me to explore my surroundings based on the fact that the area was so compelling visually. I was in the middle of a place that seemed to be off the beaten path. Very few people were living here. I'm not only talking about the waterfront area by the East River, but it was Tribeca, it was the Bowery, it was all these places that in my new book I consider Lower Manhattan. It's because of this emptiness and this out of the way sense, it started pulling me. And one of the reasons was because there were no skyscrapers. We had no large buildings in the immediate area. It's the first time I can experience light, the water in a very different way, and certainly living next to the Brooklyn Bridge captivated me. Going through negatives is a very arduous thing and an exciting thing. So I started going back in time looking for, I don't know what. When you're younger, you don't have the experience that you have when you're older, so things that you didn't think that were important back then could very possibly be important now. It's an unusual thing to be a resident of an area and at the same time be a serious artist and have subject matter that you can be familiar with in a way perhaps that other people would not. Like, for example, just walking back and forth under the bridge. Someone like me who knows every single block, literally, of Lower Manhattan, I almost like I can go with my eyes closed. I stand there sometimes now and go, where am I? That's pretty amazing. I'm a New Yorker and I'm a girl from Brooklyn, and I feel that the homogenization of the world and the fact that we are losing our collective memory of what is important and what history can teach us is so critical. It was my need to hold on to these things that I considered to be such characteristics of New York, the New York that I believed in and loved and felt so sympathetic to. I was very intrigued by all the eccentricities that went on there, because you have to remember that when I was there, I caught the last wave of men literally working with tools that have disappeared. Forklifts now replaced the hand trucks. There were no computers, so everything was done by brain work. And you had to compute on your receipt pad how much, how many, who owed you money. One of the stories I've told before was the first night I went down, I had to photograph the Paris Bar. The Paris Bar was a national treasure for so many reasons. And when they threw me out of there, that night, I was so angry. This isn't for me. I mean, we need these pictures in the world, to see these faces of these men, with the smoke billowing out and the fluorescent lighting hitting Mikey the bartender, who looked like Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca with that cigarette. So I went back because I needed to try again. And those experiences, those early experiences where I made a little headway, became the framework for moving forward with this piece. Other boxes of photographs contain contact sheets from decades of traversing again and again the familiar streets of Lower Manhattan, Chinatown, Tribeca, and the Bowery. I shot ruins of buildings, the demolition of famous waterfront saloons, ancient alleyways, and in some cases, 19th century buildings destroyed by mysterious fires and soon after replaced with new developments. What did the passage of decades reveal to me? What dynamics were at play in my images of the same streets that I walked repeatedly for years? What fell off as the old was swept away by the new?
They sure love that Christmas tree. The Winter Village at Bryant Park attracts the tourists and the locals. In the evenings, visitors walk shoulder to shoulder in the marketplace in search of great buys.
When you step out into the crowd to go grab a coffee or use the restroom, it is miserable. I don't understand why people shop in that.
But is that the holiday spirit? If you go during morning hours, just when the vendor booths open, you can avoid the crowd and focus on all the goods the market offers. Many of the vendors are small businesses owned by local craftsmen, artists, and entrepreneurs. A great example is this 15-year-old company named Miss Tea, which specializes in organic loose-leaf tea and herbal infusions. The associates behind the experience shared with us their favorite part about being stationed in the market.
It's just the Christmas, holiday energy and just being in the heart of New York City here on 42nd Street.
My favorite part is all the excitement, all the people, the tourists from all over the world coming here to shop and to talk to everyone.
The holiday market, it just keeps getting better. It's so nice to be here. I mean, all the shoppers are, in the holiday spirit.
There's definitely a bit of a community here.
Everyone watches out for each other, and especially after COVID, the vending community has gotten even stronger.
Othniel Cassie Jr., City College News.
CUNY TV has an app. Download it and watch us anytime, anywhere on the go. Thank you for being with us. For more episode highlights and sneak peeks into our upcoming stories, meet us on our social media platforms. These year-end stories of creativity and culture come to you from the largest university in the nation, the City University of New York.